Google's environmental report of 2019 makes some bold claims. We strive to build sustainability into everything we do, it says. And it also says the company's been carbon neutral for over a decade. And certainly Google.org, the company's philanthropic arm, has distributed many tens of millions of dollars around the world in service of social and sustainability aims. And it's helped other social enterprises and non-profit organizations to increase their own impact. So to find out more about the corporate philosophy behind these metrics and about more specific initiatives for helping companies in Asia, I spoke recently to Marija Ralic, the APAC Lead for Google's philanthropic arm, Google.org. So tell me about Google and its philanthropic intentions across the board, because I know you have a number of ways and means by which you express these intentions. So give me a sense of the company broadly and your position here in Asia.
Sure. Google.org is the philanthropic arm of Google, and our goal is to bring the best resources of Google to solve some of the complex societal problems. How we do that is by connecting innovative nonprofit organizations and social enterprises with the unique blend of support. So we want to use our resources and especially our engineering know-how to contribute to solving some of the world's most urgent problems. So when Larry and Sergey laid out this vision for Google.org, they hoped that Google.org efforts would have a positive impact on the world. So just as the Google's mission is to make products universally accessible and helpful to everyone, at Google.org we take the same approach. By being helpful by providing the best resources of Google to our grantees. We work very closely with our grantees to gain a deep understanding of their work and their needs and challenges that they're facing. So we know what are the levers that we could pull together to improve and scale their projects to the wider community.
Just tell me quickly about the relationship between Google.org and Google, the company, and how you see the relative approaches and, I guess, the DNA. I mean, you've talked about how the intentions of the founders began, but how do you incorporate those intentions into a business structure in something as large as Google? Because clearly the shareholders are demanding one thing, and these other elements of philanthropy and ESG and things like that are demanding another.
Yeah, absolutely. So we take a holistic approach. Well, first of all, Google.org is part of the company. So we take a holistic approach by ensuring that whenever we support an organization, we offer this unique blend of support. That could be getting our Googlers to volunteer, connecting them with other organizations within our Google.org network, or teaching them how to use different digital tools online. So, for example, when I say we leverage the best resources of Google to support these organizations, that would entail three main things. The first one is funding. Our goal is to use our philanthropic capital to support this sector to take informed risk, spur some innovation, and provide comprehensive support for marginalized communities. Technology is the second resource, and being part of the company also enables us to leverage this resource. So we connect our organizations, nonprofit organizations that we support, with Google engineers, with the technology, so then they can bring their solutions into life. And finally, as I mentioned, so maybe the biggest and the strongest resource that we have are Google volunteers. So organizations
the Googlers, as you call them.
Googlers, exactly. So organizations that we support consistently tell us that they would like to use and leverage more of technology. But quite often, it's really hard for them to find and retain the right talent. So what we do is to match our Google volunteers, Googlers, with our nonprofit organizations, so then they can help them with a sustained impact.
So you have internal Google tech people, presumably coders, developers, all those heavy-hitting roles, and they volunteer their time as the philanthropic effort.
Absolutely. So actually, volunteering is a really big part of our strategy. And we are, so as I mentioned, so we try to always leverage and match our volunteers with our strategic NGOs. And sometimes that can be on a short term, it can be on a long-term basis, but really Google volunteering is a huge part of our corporate philanthropies. Employees are really the superpower of our toolkit at google.org. We always try to see how we can support these organizations, how we can learn from them, and then we can engage our Googlers. And that is actually part of our...
Certainly all you guys in Silicon Valley have certainly sucked up a vast number of the planet's resources when it comes to tech expertise, as we here in Asia know very well. It's very hard to get good tech, so loaning those folks out for other people to use is fantastic. But how does that process work? So this volunteering process, how do you choose which projects you will let them go out for? I know you give each of them a fixed amount of time and some bandwidth in order to perform those functions, but for whom will they perform those functions, and how are those decisions made?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we do is, so in addition to the short-term volunteer engagement, we also see huge value in going deeper, and so that is why we also launched Google.org Fellowship, which is a pro bono program that matches experts, Googlers, with Google.org grantees for up to 6 months on full-time technical projects. And these Googlers would work alongside the nonprofit staff to ensure the work has a sustained impact. So how do we choose these organizations? So we know that the best answers often come from those closest to the problem. So we look for the nonprofit innovators who understand the needs of the marginalized and vulnerable populations in their own communities and around the world. These innovators create new and sometimes unexpected solutions to address inequalities. We look for nonprofits, social enterprises, and civic entities who really understand the needs of marginalized communities and vulnerable populations. They bring some innovation. They think about scaling their initiatives. They include some technology, and they also think about sustainability from the perspective of what happens once the funding is over from google.org.
And tell us a little bit about how that works here in Asia. Can you give us a couple of examples about the kind of projects that you have been backing?
Yes, absolutely. So as the COVID-19 pandemic started across the globe, we, along with the rest of the company, shifted our resources to address some of the challenges that everyone is facing globally. So some of these initiatives that we have been supporting are around economic relief and recovery. And the second one is distance learning and education, and the third one is humanitarian and health support.
These are your categories of interest in Asia in particular, or company-wide?
Company-wide. So as COVID-19 happened, so we shifted all of our resources along with the company to address some of these challenges. And these are the three main areas that we have identified as the areas where we can be most helpful to these organizations, and how we can bring not only our funding, but also our technology and volunteers and the best expertise to support these nonprofit and civic organizations. So, for example, in economic relief and recovery, one of the examples that we have supported, one of the initiatives that we have supported here in Asia Pacific is the support that we provided to Youth Business International. This organization wanted to launch a rapid and response recovery program to provide critical support services, including helplines, to more than 100,000 underserved SMBs across 16 ASEAN countries. So in order for them to keep providing this support to these SMBs, as they're being one of the hardest hit businesses, not only in Asia Pacific, but also globally, we from Google.org supported them with a 2.5 million grant.
You've also done, one of the others that you mentioned was education, and education has been hard hit by COVID, obviously. Most of the world's school children having to take at least some time off from going into a classroom. Tell us what you're doing in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. So as the COVID-19 pandemic started, billions of teachers and students couldn't go to school. And they couldn't continue teaching and learning because of not being able to access school. So what we did, we wanted to support these organizations that are enabling teachers and students to continue teaching and learning remotely. So what we did, for example, in India, is that we supported the Kaivala Education Foundation, which is an organization that told us that many of these teachers in India do not know how to use different digital tools online, so then they can continue teaching these students remotely. So they came up with this initiative, and we have, from Google.org side, we have supported this initiative with the $1 million grant for Kaivala Education Foundation to work with two additional implementing organizations, Central Square Foundation and Teacher App, to train 700,000 teachers across India to ultimately reach some of the remotest children across India with education.
Again, a mixture of grant giving and donation, and presumably some of the Google Fellows getting involved with applying some of their expertise to those projects, right?
Yes, correct. So what we do, when we start working with the nonprofit organizations, they come up with the project scope and the plan, mainly addressing the local needs and the challenges of the vulnerable people and communities in their countries. So yes, they submit their proposals, and with the plan, sometimes these proposals and initiatives are for 1 year or 6 months, but sometimes they are even longer, for 2 or 3 years.
And is the engagement on a Google to initiative basis, if you know what I mean? Is it a one-to-one relationship, or do you engage in partnerships with other organizations, whether they be private corporations or non-profit organizations, to build bigger initiatives?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we have been seeing that other tech companies are supporting similar initiatives, which is great. It is really wonderful to see that the whole sector and society is coming together to support with the best resources that they have. Sometimes that will be money and funding, but sometimes that is just an act of kindness and volunteering. We always welcome collaboration with other partners and companies. In fact, actually, some of our grantees are being supported by other companies as well. For example, Youth Business International and their initiatives to support SMBs is being supported by the Accenture Foundation.
So let me throw a theoretical at you. I mean, if a non-profit in this part of the world needed help, maybe from a Google Fellow who can provide the tech backup, or just philanthropic help in the form of money, how would they approach you?
Yeah, so because of the different initiatives that we support, so for example, and they can reach out to us in different ways. First of all, I would encourage everyone to come and visit our google.org website, because then they can find a lot of information there. What is it that we are doing, how we are supporting different organizations. And particularly one initiative that they can always find more information about is the AI for Social Impact Challenge. Every time we have some challenges, that we host some challenges from Google side, we post information on our website, so they can find this information there.
And let me just sort of get very, very granular with the tech side of things. Now, you volunteer the time of the developers and the experts on this front. What about the products? I mean, are Google products available on specific terms to nonprofits or to organizations that need your help?
Yeah, absolutely. So we understand that technology is a great lever in helping these organizations to reach even greater impact. And when deployed and developed thoughtfully, this technology can really enable them to reach millions and support so many underserved communities, not only in their countries, but also worldwide. But technology is just a tool, right? So it's really important to learn how to use that technology, but also how to gain necessary skills. So then these organizations and beneficiaries, vulnerable people, can also create new technology by learning these digital tools online.
Absolutely. As somebody who's still struggling to get to terms with Google Drive, I know exactly what you're talking about. But so we've talked about your three pillars: economics, health, and economic relief, distance learning, and health and science. And those are principally at the forefront of your agenda right now because of COVID, obviously. I mean, I guess once COVID, fingers crossed, becomes less of an issue globally, you'll turn your attention elsewhere. How does that process work? How do you decide at a corporate level where to begin to direct the attention and the focus?
Yeah, so actually, our commitment to economic recovery, education, and inclusion has been deeply rooted in our strategy, and we have been supporting organizations in this area for the longest time. For example, in India, we have been supporting organizations that are helping young people and underserved people get access to education and educational materials, not only online, but also offline, and especially in these remotest areas. So, for example, one of the examples in India is the organization Central Square Foundation that helps people who don't have access to devices or Wi-Fi connection to still get access to the quality educational materials by having these educational materials broadcasted via TV and community radio.
Let me finish by just going back to a fairly broad perspective on all of this. I mean, you said a moment ago that you think that the tech industry as a whole, as well as the broader communities, were beginning to come together around this kind of thinking. And I do hope you're right. I'm not entirely sure that it's the entire world or the entire community that is doing it. But do you get a sense that the agenda is shifting to take these things into greater consideration, particularly from your perspective as Google? It's quite interesting because, you know, the company started out with the "Don't be evil" motto. Do you think that there's any sense that we're moving away from "Don't be evil" and more towards to a more proactive "Let's be good" and do something more impactful?
I'm an optimist, Teymour, and we've been seeing a lot of shifts in globally, actually, on how vulnerable people are getting access to digital literacy and skills, how they're being enabled to find jobs, how technology is enabling them, many organizations, to think how to use that and leverage that technology to creating some interesting and good things that will be valuable to others, right? We have a number of examples of organizations that were winning organizations from AI for Social Impact Challenge, where they would create new technology like to help other people. For example, Gringo Foundation in Indonesia is the organization that leverages AI, artificial intelligence, to help reduce waste and plastic in Indonesia. And not only in Bali, where their headquarters is, but also in Indonesia and worldwide. So they're thinking about innovative ways how they can use and leverage technology and skill set that they have, so then they can be more helpful to everyone else.
And just from I guess the other side of that picture is the employee side. It's a question I ask a lot of people. What is the grassroots or the bottom of the pyramid impression that you have? Are employees coming into Google with a desire and even a demand that the company be more environmentally and socially friendly and proactive?
I think so. And the reason why I'm saying this is many Google volunteers are being so proactive in wanting to be engaged and to give back to the community by either volunteering their skills and time, by mentoring some beneficiaries, or helping organizations deploy different technologies so then they can pivot their initiative to COVID-19 pandemic, or by just donating their personal funding to some of these organizations. And we have been receiving so many requests from our Googlers to think about innovative and different ways and how we can support these local communities. And not only our strategic NGOs, grantees that we support from google.org, but also organizations like grassroots organizations that are that they champion, that they want to support.
That's fantastic, Marija. And I hope you'll let us know. I mean, here at Tech for Impact, we like telling stories about just those kinds of initiatives. So let us know when you're doing interesting work and when you've got some interesting stories like that.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you talking to us. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Teymoor.